Antichrist is not anti-Christian. Antichrist is anti-Jew. The word Antichrist comes from the word Messiah. Christ is from Messiah. Antichrist is the false deliverer. Messiah means deliverer. So the problem for the Christian church is in looking for this false deliverer of the Jews in some sort of anti-Christian behavior of a Roman or European leader, because the prophecy of Daniel indicates that out of Rome, out of the fourth kingdom, will come these 10 horns in the end that will rise up against the Jews. And so a lot of the Christian church expects that to be a Western union of European leaders, one of which will be the Antichrist. But if we understand it from the Jewish perspective, of course, even the word Antichrist, which only occurs in John's letters, the Apostle John, who writes that anyone who denies Jesus as the Messiah is the Antichrist, and that there are many Antichrists that have come. People were worrying about this last one. The Antichrist, the false deliverer, and that comes from Daniel. The people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. The man of sin that the Lord will consume with the brightness of his coming. This is this final redemption of the Jews. This is this final Antichrist, this final person who doesn't acknowledge Jesus as the Messiah. So John's pointing out to the Jews in that day that many Antichrists have come, and that the spirit of Antichrist is in fact already at work. It's that spirit of denying that Jesus is the Messiah. So it's very much a Jewish perspective, because it's the Jews that understand from their scripture from Genesis all the way through Malachi, that though God would punish them through dispersion, scattering them and destroying them and putting them at the mercy of their enemies, he would eventually bring them back, and he would settle among them, and he would cleanse them, and they would be his people again, and he would complete his purposes in them. And they know that that has not happened. What Paul and the other apostles and disciples of Christ went around arguing was that in fact this Messiah had come, and Paul made these persuasive cases, and so did the other apostles, from the scriptures, that the Messiah had to suffer and die. They weren't expecting that. They were expecting God to come and conquer they know that in the end they'll be surrounded by their enemies, as they've always been, and they were in the days of Rome. And their Messiah would come and set them free from that, set them up in Jerusalem as a mighty nation that would rule with an iron scepter and all the nations, and all the nations would come to them and be blessed by their existence. Okay, well, that hasn't happened, and they didn't understand that how a Messiah could come and that not happen, how he could be a carpenter, a Nazarene, a poor man that ate with tax collectors and sinners, and okay, he healed people, but he called himself God, and that was crazy. He couldn't have been the God that they were waiting for. So you can see how the misunderstanding was there, and that's what the apostles went out and taught about. And if you look, they all got killed by the Jews, not the Gentiles. In fact, even Paul's early journeys, when you read about it in Acts, everywhere he went to the Jewish synagogue, as was the custom, it says. He was a Pharisee. He knew the law, and he argued, it said, proving that Jesus was the Christ. And often this upset the Jewish people, and they threw him out. They beat him. They threatened his life. He had to escape from places. He was told, don't go back there. Oh my gosh, they're looking for you. It caused an uproar in Greece as well, when the Athenians said, hey, he's going to diminish our importance as upholders of the temple of Artemis. He's saying there's a greater God. So that caused a little bit of a ruckus over there in Greece, but they put that down. Just the proconsul said, hey, we have got courts for that. So, but it was the Jews that persecuted the early church. It was the Jews that, killed the apostles and went after Paul. So why? Because they didn't believe this Jesus was the Messiah. And that's the whole thing. If you look at Paul's conversion, Paul, why are you persecuting me? And so this is now the story that goes on into the future. And so it's the Jews that are still awaiting their Messiah. And it's the Christian scripture, and even the Jewish scripture, Daniel tells them, people of the prince that shall come. Now the prince, that's associated with their prince. He's just telling them about the 70 weeks of years prophecy and how at the end of the 69 weeks, Messiah the prince will be cut off, but not for himself, and the people of the prince that shall come. So this is associated with Messiah the prince. The people of the prince that shall come will destroy the city and the sanctuary. And so he's been equated with this Antichrist character. What I'm trying to get Christians to understand is this is a Jewish situation. The Christians that have accepted Messiah, there's no false deliverer for them. They've already found the deliverer. The false deliverer that comes to destroy the Jews again, which is something they know their Messiah has to save them from. All of the Gospels record Jesus telling them when they say, when will this happen, and what will will be the sign of your coming and the end of the age? And he tells them about first he tells about earthquakes and famines, but don't be alarmed, those have to happen. He says, then you'll be handed over to be persecuted and be hated in my name. And when you see the abomination spoken of by the prophet Daniel, run for the hills. And he goes on to say no flesh would be saved if we didn't shorten the days. The Jewish race would be extinguished. And this is all things that these apostles, who are all Jews, who have learned the law, they've learned now how Jesus fulfills the law from their standpoint. And so they're proving how this false Messiah is going to come at the end, that's always been part of the scriptures for the Jews. There's going to come this desolation that brings them to their knees, and only their Messiah can save them. So Paul speaks of something that has to be taken out of the way, and then that man of sin can be revealed. Of course, the man of sin is another term for this character at the end that's responsible for the desolation, the abomination that's set up in a wing of the temple that causes desolation. Out of Revelation, we learn that the first seal is opened, and it's a white horse, which symbolizes peace. He's given a crown, and it's in the original language we know it's a crown that's given in honor, not in victory of battle. So he's given a crown of honor, and he goes forth conquering and to conquer. But it starts with this peace that comes about, and Daniel says through peace he'll destroy many. We're talking about this Antichrist character now that exists throughout the scriptures. The power that's unleashed from the bottomless pit that goes into the beast. That beast supposedly is also this Antichrist character. And what does this beast go to do? Well, they surround Jerusalem, as far as all the Old Testament scripture will tell you. This beast doesn't go after the Christians. That's the point I'm trying to make. This isn't anti-Christian. This is the false deliverer of the Jews, and the beast that comes out of the pit in what is commonly thought of as the midpoint of the Great Tribulation period goes into this person who then sets up this abomination in the wing of the temple that causes desolation, and from what you understand from Daniel, claims to be God and says all these abominable things, setting himself up as if he were God. This is also this person that Revelation says receives, these other kings receive power for an hour under this person. So this is a leader of a confederation of other kings that have this, if you will, this supernatural power or guidance or some such spiritual endowment. And so again, this all turns out to be the false Messiah, the prince of the people that shall come, that will destroy the city and the sanctuary. Now, So this is not anti-Christian. And again, and then when you go even to John's letters, he talks about the fact that Antichrist is already the spirit and the many Antichrists that have come. Well, who had come by John's time but people that were absolutely against Jesus being the Messiah? Come on, you guys are crazy. We got to stop you. We got to kill you guys. You can't keep saying Jesus is the Messiah. That these are Jews that were saying that because they were undermining the law of Moses as they saw it. They were saying a bunch of things about the feast days, about circumcision, that these weren't important anymore because Jesus, the Messiah, had already come and fulfilled these things. And so even the Gentiles now had access to the Jewish blessing without circumcision, without observing the customs of the law. And so the Jews naturally said, wait a minute, who said? And they said, well, Jesus said. And they said, well, that's not what our scripture says to us. And so this is the big schism that happened. And the end comes when the Jews are driven back through affliction. And their Messiah has to come and save them from this false Messiah. So someone has to arise that they claim is their Messiah. And years ago, my father recorded that one of the old rabbis, who's now gone, but was one of the highly respected Orthodox Jewish rabbis, said that the nation was ready to claim, or should claim, anyone Messiah that brought them peace and safety, because that's what their scripture says. They're waiting. Their Messiah is going to bring peace and safety. The children will play in the streets in the end, and the nations will all get along because they will rule. They will have rulership. So they imagine their Messiah will come with power, someone that has, say, military might. And so that's who they're waiting to say, hey, this is our Messiah. This person's brought us peace and safety. But this turns out to be their false Messiah, Jesus, as the Christians understand, as Paul taught, and as all the apostles who were Jews taught. And as you read the Bible, you see that many in the Jewish synagogues and such believed. And that was really the basis of the church. As I say, everywhere Paul went on his first and even second missionary journeys, he always went to the synagogue first. And then he'd get frustrated or beat up or threatened to be killed, and he'd say, I'm taking this message to the Gentiles. So anyway, the Antichrist is the false deliverer of the Jews that will arise in the end times. And we know that that's upon us because of the feet kingdom and the toes that come out of the feet from Nebuchadnezzar's image. And it's the little horn that rises up from one of those kings, which happen to be Muslim kings. And if you don't know that, check out our teaching on Nebuchadnezzar's image.